I want to give you guys a heads up. The next 2 weeks of the Hey Coach Tony show should be off the hook. Last week I got a terrific response from umpires and officials throughout the area when I was doing the show on the Deanans and how the umpire got punched in the face. I started asking umpires, what do parents and coaches do that drive you nuts? And it turns out I got a bunch of emails during the week. Turns out a lot of you umpires want to get a crack at getting on the air to talk about these things that are wrong with us as parents and coaches. So next week, which is August 13th, I'm going to have maybe 2 or 3 different youth sports officials here in studio with me, and we're going to hold a little gripe session. So you're going to want to tune in and maybe learn a thing or two from the eyes of the youth sports official. Now, the following Saturday, August 20th, I got a real treat. Okay. The president of Coach Tony's Mongo Nation, if you remember Nooch from Franklin Square, all the way out in Long Island. He's coming all the way up from Long Island to join me for a follow-up on a story that a lot of you may remember. Way back in February, there was, and if you want to check it out, go on my YouTube channel. Just search for Hey Coach Tony Radio on YouTube and go to the February 10th episode of Hey Coach Tony. There was a story we did about a kid named Anthony Baruto, 16-year-old from Florida, who was cut from his high school baseball team because of his inability to field the pitcher's position. By the way, this inability, if you didn't see the show, this inability stems from the fact that Anthony walks around on 2 prosthetic legs. Now, there was quite a bit of controversy, as you can imagine, surrounding this story, and that controversy recently got a little more suspicious. I was told by both Anthony and his mom that they received a phone call from the coach who, in fact, told them that Anthony was being cut specifically because he has no legs. I was personally so taken back by that statement that I have reopened my investigation into this story, and I'm hoping to have some formal statements, affidavits, whatever, from the school, the AD, the coach, the social studies teacher, whoever I can get my hands on. So, again, you're not going to want to miss the next 2 weeks of Hey Coach Tony. We're on every Saturday at 9 a.m. Stick around.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio, joined in studio by Dr. Sean Rooney of Rooney Orthodontics in Mayapack. We've been talking about mouth safety throughout the course of the show, and in this last segment, I got to tell you, there's something I want to discuss that is very important, and I wanted to do it last week. Each year, right around this time, there are cases of emergency room visits and even deaths because of this last piece. You're still curious what I'm talking about? I'm talking about heat exposure and poor hydration. With youth football season right upon us here in the Northeast and already opened up in many parts of the country, it's very important to discuss hydration and cooling off. If you haven't noticed, global warming is in full effect here in the Northeast. It has been a ridiculously hot summer. Right. And then, of all places, where do I go for a week of baseball? Joplin, Missouri, where it was, I believe, 175 degrees. It was ridiculous. I wanted to get to this last week, but we ran out of time. And timing is everything. Last week I was going to say that I was hoping this would be the year we would get through August without hearing about a kid dropping dead at football practice. Yeah. Well, wouldn't you know it, the stories came literally pouring in right after I got back from the show last week. 2, not 1, but 2 Georgia high school football players died on Tuesday, one of them after more than a week in the hospital. In South Carolina, linebacker Tyquan Xavier Brantley died. This 14-year-old kid was walking off the field with the Lamar High School football team when he started complaining of cramps, and then he collapsed.
That's terrible.
The medical examiner in Collin County, Texas, says heart issues associated with heat exposure happened to kill a football coach on the field at Prestonwood Christian Academy just on Monday morning. About 30 minutes into Monday's practice at Patrick Henry High School in Roanoke, Virginia, 2 players complained of chest pains and confusion. The players, one of them was a varsity team member, the other one was, I think, on the JV. They were loaded into ambulances and taken to the hospital. These kids did not die unless I missed something and there's been an update there. But, like I said, just hours after attempting to discuss this on the air, it's very disheartening to hear about these stories. I've been reading more and more about this, and I want to take a minute to pass on a few things to you about this incredibly important topic.
Right.
Doc, I know you're a mouth and tooth guy, but any specific experience or opinions on this particular topic?
Well, hydration's super important. My love right now is doing triathlons, and it's one of the fastest growing sports out there, and everything's about hydration. I mean, and fueling your body. I think it's important to realize that you really have to hydrate not only while you're playing, but before you're playing. And that starts in the night before and having a game plan to get to do that. We talked about hydrating a couple hours before. You want to hydrate minutes before. You want to have a game plan when you go in, and they should hydrate every several minutes.
Yeah, I mean, some of the most important things about hydration and cooling off, most people never even learn this, much less remember.
Right.
Hydration does begin as early as the night before a game, especially this time of year. Just because you drink a bunch of water doesn't mean it's getting through to your body in a timely fashion, if at all. There's things like electrolyte balance that helps the absorption of water into your bloodstream.
Yep.
I tell all my players, because this is a fact, by the time, if you're playing on a really hot day, by the time you feel thirsty, guess what? It's already too late. It is too late, and your body is already operating at less than peak performance. All the things that affect your body due to a lack of hydration are already happening. Thirst is your body telling me you're doing something wrong. You need to fix this. And if you continue to exert yourself, like I said, it's already too late. You may not drop dead from it, but you're already at less than peak performance, and you're not going to get back there in time.
Right. And Tony, I think what's important, you shouldn't be doing this during game time. You should be practicing hydrating during practice. And everybody's body's a little bit different, and you have to find that right balance for yourself. So when you go into game time, you know exactly how to hydrate properly and realize what your body needs.
And I'll tell you what, I have had it. And listen, it's unfortunate that football season really begins at the hottest time of the year, but and a lot of schools are taking precautionary measures and starting to put hydration policies in place. But in the past, when this first became epidemic, it was the old knucklehead football coach mentality of you're going to run, and because you didn't practice well, you guys don't get a water break.
Right.
And that was the kind of crap that resulted in kids dropping dead on the field.
Right.
And listen, if you're a football coach, get your head out of your butt. If you're one of those guys that thinks that a water break is a reward or a punishment if you withhold it, you need to wake up, because with the information we have now, you had really better darn well know that these kids need to be hydrating on a regular basis. Yeah. I would go so far as to say, if your kids don't need a bathroom break during practice at this time of year, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Well, look at these statistics. If you lose 1 to 2% of loss of body weight, you compromise your physiological function by 10 to 20%. Right there. So if you want to perform well, you want to have great practices, you just got to stay hydrated, or else you're not going to do well.
But then there's the other things. I mean, the things I learned. I don't want to sound like I'm speaking from a pulpit here, because I learned a lot of this too. When you first start to feel thirsty, what's happening is one of the first things to go is the natural lubrication in your joints.
Right.
And think about it. Your elbows, your knees, your ankles, your wrists, your shoulders, your hips. These are things you need to be at absolute peak performance. This is like running a car at the Indy 500 without motor oil.
Right.
I mean, it's a dramatic parallel to draw, but if your joints are suffering, your overall performance is suffering. And forget about that. Just the fact that, like I said, guys, each year I get the stories, and I was really hoping this was going to be the August that it didn't happen, and guess what? August 4th and August 3rd, we're hearing about kids that are dropping dead on the field. And the other thing for the football coaches, your kids are not going to come into camp in shape.
Right.
So that's one thing you know is going to be a problem.
You're right.
B, they're going to want to pretend they're the big, tough football players. So it's really up to the coaches and the trainers, if you have them, to not suggest, not imply, not urge, but to mandate. If the kids aren't thirsty, force a cup of water down your face.
Right.
I mean, nothing bad's going to happen from an extra cup of water. The potential downside from withholding that are irreversible.
Irreversible. The coaches have to not only teach somebody how to play a sport, but they have to teach them how to fuel their body properly and perform properly. So coaches really have to put a lot of emphasis into that.
Hey, if you had a kid on your team that was eating nothing but candy bars and Doritos, you'd probably step in and say you're not fueling your body the right way.
That's right.
I hate to use the old cliche. 2/3 of our bodies are made up of water.
Right.
That means everything in your body at some level is made up of roughly 2/3 water. Why would you not want to make sure you had the proper levels? And for the kids that are listening, it ain't just about Gatorade, because what's the downside of too much electrolytes, not enough water?
Well, basically what will happen is one of the things you'll start having some GI problems with it. So too many electrolytes are not good. You want to have the right balance.
That was a really nice way to say if you drink nothing but Gatorade and it's sugar and electrolytes, you're going to need that bathroom break, and it's not going to be the quick and easy one.
Right.
GI trouble.
You have to have the right balance.
Dude, stick to teeth. GI problems. You're going to have a case of the sprints, is the way we'd like to say it. Right. But again, all kidding aside, we're at a point now where the safety of our kids, we push our athletes tremendously, and I think overall it's a good thing because the kids who are not active in sports, our obesity levels are through the roof. But I will tell you, the kids who do participate in sports, I would go so far as to say our children who pay attention to being physically fit are probably as physically fit as any generation that's ever existed. I mean, my own kids, they just got their physicals yesterday, and the doctor said, if I didn't know your kids were athletes, I was going to send them to a cardiologist. My kids' resting heart rates, I can be proud papa for a second, are between 45 and 48 beats a minute.
Wow.
And that is like off the charts.
Wow,
that is something and I'm proud of that.
That's great.
My resting heart rate is probably 135 to 140 because I'm in the worst shape of my life because I run around and grab hot dogs while I'm going from game to game. So while the rest of the world gets in bikini shape for summer, I'm in the worst shape of my life in the summer. But getting back to the hydration and the cooling off, there is no upside to being the tough guy. There is no upside to being the big badass football player because, like I said, when you get to the point where your body needs its fuel and you don't deliver it, like I said, the results could be dramatic and irreversible. So I don't know if there's any other way to say it.
If you want to get the best performance out of your athletes, you got to hydrate them.
Well, plus you increase all the risks of injuries. I mean, cramps lead to pulls, right?
Right.
Tendinitis, ligament injuries, and for the young kids that have those growth plate injuries like Osgood Schlatters I talked about, plantar fasciitis and things along those lines, those things are exacerbated.
Right.
The risks of, I mean, these kids have to deal with this on a regular basis as it is. It's part of life. When you go through issues of growth plates and pounding on these large muscles that pull growth plates apart, it's natural. It's not life-changing stuff. But if you're not hydrating, you're making all those tiny little things that much worse. Right. Sean, I told you this was going to be another quick hour, man. Here it goes. But listen, Sean Rooney Orthodontics, great guest. Give him a call at 845-621-1222.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it so much. It's been a lot of fun.
We will certainly do this again.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, like I said, the next 2 weeks are going to be absolutely off the chain, so you better get your butts to a radio or an internet or to my website, www.heycoachtony.com. Every Saturday morning, 9 a.m., guys. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Wear a mouth guard.